African Dream podcast. My name is Eunice Ajim and I'm your host. Today we are going to switch things up a little bit and make it a little bit different. As you may have realized so far, I'm hosting the podcast today by myself. I've been having so many ideas on how we can improve the experience of this podcast, provide so much valuable information. And there are so many things, so many questions I keep getting asked on a regular basis that I do want to be able to educate our community on just venture capital, startups, fundraising, and a lot of other amazing things that happened in the startup ecosystem. Again, just a quick reminder, I'm Eunice Ajim and I'm the founding partner of Ajim Capital. Ajim Capital is an early stage venture capital fund investing in tech and tech-enabled companies across sub-Saharan Africa. And even though today I can call myself a venture capitalist, my experience didn't start that way. It has been a very interesting journey over the last, I'll probably say 10 and a half years, 11 years. So today, I want to share a little bit of my own story, some of the challenges I have overcome, and my experience getting from leaving Cameroon as this 15-year-old shy girl to eventually deciding, you know what, I want to make a difference in the African continent and I want to build something meaningful that is going to impact the life of millions and millions of Africans. And over the next couple of weeks, I'm also going to be providing different resources. We're still going to be interviewing guests, but I also want to be able to share amazing resources just around, again, startups, right? Like I have been an entrepreneur myself and I'll share my story in a little bit on how I have launched multiple tech startups and several businesses, have failed miserably in several of them, but keep going and keep improving and eventually becoming better, having the grit. And then I'm going to share a lot around venture capital. It is such a new industry for a lot of us, for the African continent, right? For some of us that don't come from wealthy families, have no prior experience in the venture capital, private equity. And I'm not going to come out here and say I'm an expert. In fact, I have learned so much over the last 9 to 12 months as I have been learning about venture capital, startups, private equity, right? Africa as a whole. And I want to be able to share this. If you take a step back, there's really not that much information on how venture capital works, how fundraising works, right? Yes, there is a flock of information for startup founders, but very little for people that are trying to break into the venture capital industry. And I was there 9 or 12 months ago and I was like, where do I start? I literally went on Google and I was like, hey Google, how do I launch a venture capital fund? Google gave me as much information as I could probably find online. But I learned so much by speaking to other people in the industry, by taking actions from my personal experience, deciding to go out there and launch a fund. And yes, it is a difficult route. Everybody's really good at telling you how challenging it is. I don't think it's just as challenging as launching my startup, right? It has just been as challenging as trying to grow in corporate America. I think it really depends on, is this something that you see yourself doing for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? And a lot of my peers that I have seen in the ecosystem, the ones that have been able to succeed are the ones that have persevered long enough to be able to stick around and actually build something meaningful. Keep in mind that you're working with a lot of people's money and you want to make sure that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. The next thing that I enjoy speaking about, and which is really the focus of who I am as a person, my fun, and what we do at Ajim Capital, is just the African ecosystem, the African market. We're going to bring out a lot of gems around why the African ecosystem right now, whether it being as a startup, and when a startup is like scalable companies, as an entrepreneur, with a regular business, like anything, right? Like as the African diaspora, why it is so important for us who have had the opportunity to come to the US, go to Europe, go to, I don't know, the UK, whatever, right? Like the opportunities for us as Africans in the diaspora to succeed and to make a difference on our continent. All right, now let's get back to the basic. Again, I'm going to be sharing so much more. I'm still going to be interviewing our amazing guests. We have released 8 episodes so far with some great VCs in the African startup space. I'm super excited about them. There have been, I've learned so much from these VCs, and I really hope if you haven't had the chance to check out some of those podcasts, go on at the beginning of the podcast, go over those interviews, try to learn as much as you can. A lot of the times we take these things leniently. I get so many DMs on a regular basis about, like, on average, right? And I'm not exaggerating, at least 20 to 50 people per week sliding in my DMs and saying, hey Eunice, can I pick your brain? Hey, can you please give me 15 minutes of your time? And a lot of the times, those questions that you think you want to take 15 minutes of my time to ask, I have answered it in an interview. I've answered it in a podcast, in a blog post, in one of my social media posts, right? It is so much more meaningful for you to do that and ask very specific questions than to come and ask for 15 minutes of somebody's time. Okay. Now, story time. I really want to share a little bit of my background of how I got here. I have shared this story. If you've had a meeting with me, you've probably heard this. But I just wanted to go a little bit more into details. So my story started way back. I was born and raised in Cameroon, from the French side of Cameroon. Je parle français. Pour tous ceux qui pensent que je suis nigérienne, I'm not Nigerian, I'm Cameroonian. And I was born and raised in Cameroon, and I have an entrepreneurial dad. He taught me so much about being an entrepreneur. My dad was one of those people that said, you only work for other people just so that you can save enough money to go start your own business. And while growing up with him, like, we would go to the market, like he had several, brick and mortar stores, and he would teach me like negotiation skills, like how to win customers, how to do sales, marketing. And I took that with me. I knew when I grow up, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I never thought of another career. So, and I was one of those that hated school. So I was like, I just want to like graduate so fast so that I can stop going to school and go to America. So I actually skipped so many classes while being in college that I graduated high school, which is what they call here, at the age of 15. And then my sister was already in the US. I knew I was going to America. And then after we started doing our paperwork, they were like, well, you're too young, you can't just go to a college at the age of 15. I think the requirement was for you to be at least 16. So we figured out a way to like get me enrolled into like an English school, even though I was already fluent in English, for me to get started here in the US. So I get all my paperwork, I get to the US, I arrived here like in December of 2011, and then I turned 16 in January, did the English school for about 6 months, and then enrolled in college the next semester. Again, I'm rushing, I want to get out of school as fast as possible, so I'm taking the maximum of courses as I can possibly take just so that I can get over my school life, right? And I started with business because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then I realized very early on that business was just too simple for me. So I leave business and then I started studying like different kinds of engineering. I'm like, okay, that's too hard, that's too technical. I'm not about that life. So I went ahead and settled for mathematics and statistics and enjoyed mathematics. Did not know what I was going to do with that career, but graduated college with a mathematics and statistics degree and a minor in finance. And it's crazy now that like me looking back, I was like, I had no idea why I did a minor in finance, but today I work in finance, which is very funny. And I got my degree in finance and left Louisiana, moved to Austin, and then started looking for a job. As an international student in the US, it's very difficult for you to find a job because most companies don't want you to just work for them for some time and then you have to leave and go back to your country. Anyway, I hustled my way and got my first job at Apple. While I was at Apple, I realized very early on that it was not for me. I was like, while I was in college, I started so many small businesses. One of the biggest one was just like being a hairstylist. And, did people's hair, was making a lot of money doing that. And then I started doing that by myself. And then eventually I hired, like when we had international students that were Africans coming into my school, I'll say, hey, if you're looking for extra money, I can teach you how to do hair. And I will take 60%, actually I will take 40% of every hair you do and you take 60%. And that was still a lot of money for them because guess what, if you're an international student, you're not making any money, and then you have an opportunity to make a little bit of cash, great. And then, so when I graduated college and I was having a regular job and I saw the amount of money that I was making versus what I used to do or like make when I was, an entrepreneur, I was like, this is horrible, I don't have my freedom, I enjoy being an entrepreneur, there's no way I'm going to become a billionaire or a multi-millionaire if I keep being, a regular employee and climb my way to the top. And also, I want to make sure there's nothing wrong with being an employee. In fact, entrepreneurs will not be who they are if they didn't have employees. So it's super important. If that's for you, great. But there are just a few people where like you have that burning desire in your heart that tells you on a regular basis that you're meant for more, right? You can do more than what you're doing right now. You have a purpose and you want to do something meaningful with your life, and that was me. So after about a year into it, I decided, you know what, I can't do this. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna become an entrepreneur, but this time I'm going to launch a tech company. Because I saw the Airbnbs and I saw the Ubers, and back then like the marketplaces were popular. I mean, everybody was building. I mean, you think people are building marketplaces now? No. When we found out about like how Uber and Airbnb were going to become billion-dollar businesses, everybody was trying to like be the marketplace for this and the marketplace for that. And back then, data science and AI and machine learning, the same way you think Web3 and the metaverse is sexy right now, that was AI back then. So I was like, you know what? AI and machine learning is the big thing right now. Facebook and Google and Amazon's are the one who can hire full-time data scientists, but like the SMEs probably can't afford to hire a data scientist with 20 years of experience. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to build a marketplace that's going to make it easy to find, hire data science professional either on a short-term or long-term basis, and I'm going to connect them with SMEs. And I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to become $1 billion business. Like we all have these ideas, and then we get excited, and then we put it out into the world, and then your goals get crushed. I think that first business was a journey. I was like, man, I know I'm a hustler, I'm gonna do this, and really push hard with the company. I was, showing up to any networking event I can possibly show up to. I was finding, consulting with SMEs. And the good thing is that back then, nobody really knew what this data science or AI really meant, right? So I also had a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, where I was capable of like bringing on, and I went to any accelerator program that was offering data science programs, and then I would get all the students like sign up on my platform. Anywhere I could post, if you're a data scientist looking to, to break into the field, join my platform, join my community. And then I'll find as many businesses I could possibly find and say, if you're a business and you're trying to figure out what the heck is data science, join my platform. Slowly started growing. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing some momentum. I'm still struggling to pay my bills, but I think there's something here. And while you're building a business, you get so many rejections, right? Like I had my family telling me like, what the heck, Eunice, like go get your job, like why are you struggling? So many of my friends telling me how it was never going to work. And by the way, even though I closed my business, I have seen several businesses out there that are performing so great and doing the exact same business model. It wasn't just for me, right? Struggled so much. I think throughout that process, even though I was getting some momentum, even though I was getting some customers, not enough really to like sustain myself, I eventually became homeless. And that's when you're like, it comes to rest, you're like, dang, Eunice, like, did it get to this point? And one day I get out of an appointment and my car is not in the parking lot. And I'm like, what is happening? Just to find out my car got repossessed. So now I'm homeless, right? Now my car got repossessed, and I'm like, and it just feels like it is struggle. Like it was just like God was like testing and tempting and like doing so many things to see, is Eunice going to stick around? Is Eunice going to keep doing this? And I did, and it hurt, and I cried, and I was depressed, and like so many other things happened. And I was struggling to eat, struggling to do a lot of things. And by the way, when I'm saying I was homeless, it does not mean I was sleeping on the street. Really just I was couch, like I was anybody that would allow me to stay at their place for a few days or weeks, I will stick around for as long as I possibly can. And I always like to tell people that despite all of these crazy things that was happening, I kept showing up, right? Like I'll wake up every single day, I'll put my makeup on, I'll curl my hair, put a suit, walk to the bus station and show up, right? And I'll show up to any meeting, anything that could help move my business forward. And eventually I came across just an amazing person and investor that was just bullish about what I was doing. He was trying to build something similar but for a very different industry. And after several conversations, he made an offer. He said, Eunice, I'm offering you to join me. Let's build this other company and let's put it out to the wall, but you have to let the other one go. And in this particular situation, this person has an amazing reputation. He's willing to put in the initial capital to get the company going. And I have the opportunity as an entrepreneur to learn from somebody that has done it before. So I let it go, and then I move on to my next thing. And this next was like the second company that we built. With this second company, I think I learned so much within a very short amount of time. Not even sure, I mean, still a couple of years, but so many learning experiences on like the right way to launch, grow, and then eventually scale a startup. I learned everything from the proper way of fundraising. My first company, I struggled to fundraise. I was out there pitching, like anything, pitch competition, accelerator programs, anybody that will accept me, I will show up. But it's a proper way of fundraising, especially as a startup. So we raised our pre-seed and things are going well, and then we're hiring our first few employees, we're acquiring our first few customers, we raised another seed round, and then now I'm like, wow, this is the way things are done. But then it also gets me curious. The people giving us money, where does that money come from? How does this work? And the more I'm curious, the more I'm learning. But then I'm not thinking anything, I'm just curious. I'm like, oh wow, this is super interesting, this is great, it helps you build your company. But I think also something sparks in my heart. And I've not mentioned this, but a lot of the things that I've done throughout my career, as somebody that is passionate about the African continent, somebody that I want to see a better Africa. In my early days, this was even me still in college, right? And even me still in Cameroon, living and breathing. I was one of those, I always have a notebook, and I write and I journal and I write a lot of things down, and I always write, and I used to write things like, I have a dream that the continent of Africa is a developed continent. I have a dream where the average African have access to affordable health care, to premium education, right, to great roads, to innovation, to just be wealthy, especially after I left the continent, came to the US, saw the opportunities that the US has to offer, and I was like, wow, I hope I live to see a lot of African countries become as developed as the US while I'm still alive. So in a lot of things that I did throughout my college life, when I started my hairstyling business, I was hiring African women. Hey, come, let me help you make money. When I did Data Geek, I had a group, I was mentoring Africans on how to become data scientists. When we did Open Teams and we had a little bit of the capital, I was like, hey, let's get to the next level. Let's hire an engineering team on the continent. And as I was going through that process, from finding talents, payroll, bringing them, onboarding them, I faced a lot of challenges, right? Things that we had never thought about in terms of, now I want to hire software engineers in Africa, where do I go? At the time, I did not know of any platform for me to go and hire specifically Africans. So I scrambled and I found them. The next thing was payroll. How do you manage payroll in different African countries? And then cross-border payment. How do we pay our Africans? For us particularly, I had to drive to the bank at the end of each month, pay and wire the money manually, right? And then it would take the bank and the banks in Africa on average 5 to 10 business days for them to get the money in their bank account. Obviously, this is not a good experience for the employee, and it's not a good feeling for the employer. So I started seeking for solutions. I'm sure there are better ways. The US is flocked with startups and startup ideas and startup businesses to help make our life easier and better and cheaper and faster. I believe there's a better way to find these startups and make a difference. So I started searching. I started looking on LinkedIn. I heard of some angel syndicates whole club, and I joined them. I remember actually even typing in and saying, hey, are there any platforms out here that makes it easy to hire like software engineers in Africa, specifically for Africans. I had a few options, and surprisingly at the time they also had a deal that was literally exactly what I was looking for. Was a platform that helps you hire African engineers, and I was like, invest. I see the value proposition. I have the problem. And I looked at the numbers, I looked at the team, I was like, this is an amazing team. The numbers look great. I was amazed by how much MRR and annual revenue some of these African startups has. And I was like, how come nobody knows about this? How come the average African in the US are not aware of some of the opportunities that are happening on the continent? The more I dig, the more I found amazing companies. And I said, and as just speaking to these founders and understanding some of the challenges. And yes, to be quite frank, a lot of those challenges are very similar to some of the challenges that most startup founders face here in the US. Access to capital, access to resources, and access to the right network. Access to capital is just like VC funding. Access to resources, the right education, right? The right mentorship, and then access to network. A lot of what you do is not always about it's not always about like you. It's also a lot more about who you know and what they know about you. So after writing a few angel investments, again, and it was not a lot, it was like I made like 10 angel investments last year. And I did not have that much money. It was very small investments. And after that, I was like, wow, there's an opportunity here. I could see the growth, I could see the progress. And my husband started telling me how we don't have that much money. You can't just be writing investments, all these great companies because you're excited about them. And then I said, well, I've been able to raise money from VCs as a startup founder. I'm pretty sure if I put my mind through it and I understand how venture capitalists can raise money, I can figure out a way to raise money to invest specifically in African tech companies. And the more I researched, the more I said, this is not very different from the way anything is being done. Is it going to be challenging? Yes. Nothing comes easy in life. If it was easy, you have hundreds and thousands of people out there doing it, right? So don't feel like you're not going to do something because it's challenging. You're not in that business. And then I decided, you know what, I'm so passionate about this. I love the African continent. I've always had 100 ideas on how I want to make Africa a better Africa. So what can I do to launch my own fund? And we are going to speak a lot more about just the whole process in future podcasts. But for today, I really just wanted to give you a little bit of the backstory. I didn't wake up yesterday and decided that, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to launch a VC fund that invests in African startups. It takes time. It took me, I don't know, I'll probably just say, I think the last 10 years of my life have been setting me up for this moment right now, today. And I think we're just in the early phase of really things booming and exploding. If today looks the way it looks, I can only imagine what 10 years from today, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? Yes, it's going to look from now. And if you're trying to break into the VC space, if you're interested in Africa as a whole, whether you're African or you're just somebody that's passionate about the African continent and wants to see it grow and expand and do amazing things, Ajim Capital is still fundraising, and we would love to share what we are doing and some of the amazing portfolio companies we have. So if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me directly on any of my LinkedIn or my social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Or you can go directly on our website and click Invest with Us. Send very little information. I will personally reach out to you and then share a little bit more about the amazing things we are seeing on the African continent. Today was Live the African Dream podcast. I'm super, super excited. You stuck around till the end, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Bye-bye.